Dewey's told us multiple times this year he thinks it's easier to play from behind in the NFL.
It's not. It's not. No, you definitely want to play with a lead.
Welcome into Teal, the show. Frank, a novel concept, play with the lead, something the Jaguars have not really seemed to master, but you know what? They're still winning games, so I guess that's all that matters at the end of the day, right, Frank?
Yeah, and I agree with Doug, by the way. Leads are better. It's just they haven't had one in a while. I think it's probably why you asked the question, but yeah, I think leads are better. But listen, this team has so many good vibes going on right now. They're playing at such a good level right now. And I'll say one thing about always getting behind. This team by now sure is confident, Jamal, they can come back, man. It's a very confident team that they can bounce back, and that's a good thing. It really is.
Well, I asked the question because Andrew Wingard's told us twice this year that he just thinks it's easier in the NFL to play from behind, and the Jaguars keep proving it week after week that maybe they are better when they're trying to play catch up. So we keep talking to him about it, and I was like, you know, I wonder what Doug Peterson thinks about this. Clearly, he does not agree with Dewey at all.
No, he doesn't. And look, everybody wants to be ahead. I think what Dewey's probably saying is it's easier to come behind in the NFL maybe than in college, but it's still better to be ahead. Listen, this team has played at such a great level. I love the fact they're loose and fun, and I think just the fact that some of the way people are talking in the locker room, Jamal, how loose and free and easy they are, and Doug's laughing at his press conferences. Look, you got a tough challenge ahead this week, but it's nice that everybody's free and easy and loose. It really is. Yeah,
that's definitely a good vibe to have when you're this far into the playoffs. Let's revisit the comeback from Saturday night, Frank. Huge comeback. They were down 27-0. I don't think very many people gave them much of a shot to come back from that deficit, but somehow, some way, this team battles back, finds a way to win the game. Third biggest comeback in NFL history, biggest comeback in Jaguars history. Here's the stat for you, Frank. In Jaguars team history, from the beginning up until last year, they had only come back from down 17-plus points once. This season, they've done it 3 times.
Pretty amazing stuff. And I will tell you this. When you come back from 9, from 10, from 17, from 17, from 27, you learn how to do it. The problem is you get in the habit of digging those holes. So the key now has to be start better. Remember, here's how weird the season's been, Jamal. At the beginning of the year, they always started well. They led 14-0 against Philadelphia. Remember all those leads they had and couldn't hold them? Then they quit getting leads and coming back. I think the key is to kind of put it all together. But listen, I'll say it again. It's a confident team that never thinks it's out of it. And one of the reasons is Trevor Lawrence. When you've got a gunslinger back there that can pass you back into it like he did on Saturday night, you're always in the game.
That's right. When you've got a quarterback like Trevor, you definitely are always in the game. After this game, Rayshawn Jenkins talked a little bit about the confidence that it takes to be able to weather the storm of being down 27 points. And he says he's impressed with the wherewithal of this locker room to hold it together.
A comeback that big in the playoffs is huge, you know. For us, man, hats off to the entire team, staff, everybody just sitting there, man, having just faith like that, just having faith like that, down 27-0 and just not budging, just going out swinging, every punch, every blow.
The one thing I know, Frank, this team doesn't want to spot the Kansas City Chiefs 27 points. There's no way that'll have a happy ending.
I think the most important part of the game is not getting behind. You got to score with them. You have to keep up. The guy's thrown 40-plus touchdown passes, Patrick Mahomes. You're going to have – this is one game that you've been able to play close to the vest defensively until the Chargers, and then the Chargers shut it down, or the Jags shut them down with about 3 minutes left in the half. They scored 3 points the rest of the way. That's not happening with the Chiefs. The Chiefs can score. They're going to score. Doug Peterson already said it today. You got to score touchdowns. You've got to keep up. The key for the Jags, Jamal, in this game is stay in the game into the second half. Don't get down 24-7 or 27-7, not in this game. Be in the game. 13-10, 21-17, 24-21. If that's the score middle third quarter, well, then the Chiefs get a little tight because they're heavily favored. And then the Jags gain even more confidence. Stay in the game till the middle of the third quarter. I think it's critical for this week's game.
Yeah, the Jaguars have a way of hanging around in these sorts of games, but if they want to do it this week against the Chiefs, they better get 6 points when they have the opportunity and not just settle for 3.
When you get this far into the postseason now, you know, everything matters. Every mistake is magnified. Every turnover is magnified. Every point you can get, and again, you're playing an explosive offense. You better score touchdowns. I mean, that goes without saying, you know, because you know they're going to score, and you just gotta try to minimize as much as possible, but maximize your opportunities.
This is a big game this week as the Jaguars hit the road to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. When Teal the Show returns, Frank Frangie and myself will talk a little bit more about the matchup that the Jaguars will have on their hands on Saturday night. Welcome back into Teal the Show, Frank. The Jaguars and the Chiefs already played once this year. Jaguars didn't win that game. Doug Peterson has never beat the Chiefs as a head coach, 0-2 against them. Jaguars as a franchise haven't beat the Chiefs since 2009, so not exactly a team that Jacksonville has had good fortunes against.
Yeah, but this is just a really good team. And a couple things. Remember, when they played up there, they lost by 10, but they missed some opportunities. Onside kick to start the game, didn't do anything with it. Got some turnovers in plus territory, did nothing with it. So you've got to take advantage of your opportunities. It's interesting how similar these teams are. Kansas City's got the really good play-calling head coach. So does Jacksonville now. Kansas City's got a really talented, big-arm young quarterback. So does Jacksonville now. Kansas City's got a really good tight end, maybe the best in football. Jacksonville's got a pretty good one now, too. They've got a physical defensive front. So does Jacksonville. If you look at the makeup of these teams, Jamal, they're very similar. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs have done it longer. Their guys are more experienced and they're more accomplished. But the makeup of these teams is very, very similar the way they're constructed.
All right. The one thing that we've kind of been struggling with, Frank, is to put our finger on exactly what's gone wrong or changed with this team when it comes to early games. Early on in the year, you touched on in the first half of the show, the team would be able to jump out to a lead, but then couldn't hang on. And now they've learned to finish football games, which is what we kept talking about early on in the season, but they're starting the game slow. If at some point this team could figure out how to really play 4 quarters, start the game just as fast as they finish the game, this would be a dangerous football team. I don't know if they can put it together in a week, but you'd like to think so.
Here's one thing that I think will help them. We've talked about this on this program, Jamal. For 3 games in a row there, the Jets, it was rainy. They weren't going to have to score a lot because you knew the Jets weren't going to. You knew the Texans weren't very good. The Titans came in here without a quarterback. So you knew there wasn't a sense of urgency offensively. Last week there was, but I thought maybe there were even some jitters. They just got off to a tough start. Physical play, maybe some stuff not called and some early interceptions. This week, there's the ultimate sense of urgency. You know you're playing probably the best team in the league. You know you're playing a team that's going to throw it all over the place. So I think you have to come out of the gates faster and more energized and with more urgency, or you're going to get blown out. Well, they know that, Jamal. Doug knows it, Trevor knows it, the team knows it. So I would expect a lot of energy from the Jags very early on in this game to not get behind, as we talked about before.
Well, you know, the one thing about this game is that the Chiefs are the #1 seed, and the Jaguars have played their best games against these Goliath-type opponents this year, and especially when their backs are up against the wall. Nobody's expecting the Jaguars to go into Kansas City and beat the Chiefs, maybe outside of some of us folks here in Jacksonville. But nobody nationally is really giving the Jaguars much of a chance in this one. And so far this year, that's when the Jaguars have been at their best. No one really gave them much of a shot to go into Nashville and get that win. Nobody gave them much of a shot against the Ravens when they were coming off the bye week. No one gave them much of a shot against the Cowboys. But every time this team goes against one of those Goliaths where everybody's counting them out, all of a sudden they come out, they weather the storm and find a way to win the game.
Well, here's one thing where it changes a little bit for me. Yes, the nation's going to paint this as David versus Goliath. We all know that. But after all those wins in a row and getting down to the final 8 teams in the NFL, I'll promise you that Jaguar team that's getting on that plane, they don't think they're David. They don't see it that way. They think they're going to go toe-to-toe with Goliath. I can tell you that. They believe it. So it's different. Before you're playing, hey, nobody expects anything of us. Let's just play recklessly. Who cares? Everyone thinks we're no good. And I think they use that. Well, people know they're good now. You're right. People don't think they're going to beat the Chiefs. But this is a way more confident team, and they've earned that confidence. I'm telling you. I think this is a second-half game. I would be very surprised if the Jags get way behind like they did last week, because if they do, they won't be able to come back. I'll bet the Jags hang around in this thing. I'd be very surprised if they do not.
Yeah, I think you're right, Frank. I said it a couple weeks ago that I thought that the Jaguars had a shot to beat the Chiefs. I'd rather them play the Chiefs than Buffalo right now for some strange reason. Maybe I'm crazy. But I don't think the Chiefs are the juggernaut that they've been in the past. They are beatable. I think it helps that the Jaguars have played them before, and it can even be a little bit of an advantage that the Jaguars weren't clicking. All the pieces weren't together the first time they played well. So you saw the Chiefs' best shot, but the Chiefs haven't seen the Jaguars' best shot. I think this team has the capability to go into Kansas City and win this football game, shock the world, surprise everybody. Maybe I'm going out on a limb here, but I see it.
Well, I'll say this. I don't know if I'm going to pick them to win. The Chiefs are very good.
Yeah.
But back to your point about them playing earlier, there's no question that really helps. Not about, to me, Jamal, as much about whether you got their best shot or not, is you've played them. These young players have been in that stadium. They've been to that airport. They've driven into the stadium. They tailgate like a college game there. That's not going to spook them because they've already seen it. They've been in the locker room. They've been on this field. One thing about playing on the road, it hurts when you're a young team and you're playing at a place where you've never played before. Well, it helps that they've played this year. There will be great familiarity. I'm telling you, this will be a confident team. There's nothing in this game that will surprise them. Now, Patrick Mahomes is really good, and Travis Kelce's really good, and they've got a really good team, and Andy Reid's a very good coach play caller. But none of that will be a surprise to this Jaguars team, and that will help them.
No, it definitely won't, and they should be confident. I mean, even think about the first time they played the Kansas City Chiefs. Recovered an onside kick, forced 3 turnovers, won the turnover battle, but somehow they still couldn't get out front. When you have those sorts of things fall your way, that sounds like a football game you win. I mean, if I tell you without looking at the final score, Frank, hey, the Jaguars got an onside kick to start the game and forced 3 turnovers and didn't turn the ball over, I'd be willing to say, you'd probably look at me and say, they probably won that game. Somehow they didn't, and I know that team and that coaching staff looks at that and says, man, we missed an opportunity. That's one that they could have gotten.
Well, agreed. But you know why they're really confident? I agree with all that, Jamal. But you know why they're really confident and why they should be confident? There's 32 teams in the National Football League. There's 8 left standing after tonight. 8 of the 32. If you're one of those 8, you darn well better be confident because you've earned that right. Anybody, I promise you, at this point forward, anybody can beat anybody in the NFL.
The Elite 8. Jaguars
The
are
Elite
part of
8.
it. The Elite 8, that's it. And you know, hey, Frank, we've talked about that 1996 run a few times. You know, it just keeps lining up. The parallels just keep showing up every week. And you know, 1996, Jaguars went and took on a #1 seed Denver Broncos. The nation doubted them. Went into Denver, got the win. Seems like we got another scenario here where we got one on our hands where it's like, is this 1996? I don't know. But you like the way it stacks up.
I will say this. I was at that game, and they were the ultimate underdogs then. They were like 15, 16-point underdogs then. They were one of the things that really served them well is nobody gave them a chance in that game. Again, I was there. I was on the plane out there. I spent some time in Denver before the game. I was around Bronco fans. Nobody gave them a chance. This is a little different. I think people expect the Chiefs to win this game. But don't think for a minute people don't think the Jaguars might win it. Back then in 96, Jamal, nobody thought the Jags, they were second year in existence, 15-point underdog or whatever it was. Nobody thought they had a chance. That is not the case this week. People expect the Chiefs to win. They're an 8.5-point favorite. But don't think for a minute, particularly in today's NFL, we've just had a weekend full of really close games. That's where the NFL is today. The Jags have a chance to win this thing, and everybody in Kansas City knows that.
Should be a good game. It will definitely be an interesting one. Last week was cold. This one probably going to be even a little bit colder. Frank, I know you're going to make the trip up to Kansas City, so I will be up there with plenty of coverage from Kansas City as the Jaguars get ready for this divisional round of the playoffs. Should be a great game. It's the middle of January. We're still talking about Jaguars football. It feels good. Hopefully this isn't the last year we get to do that. Maybe we can make this a yearly occurrence. Frank, thanks for being here. Thank you at home for tuning in. Good night. Go Jags.